Marcia Munt, and I am the National Training and Evaluation Strategist for New Sector Alliance. I'd like to thank you for taking part in our alumni career coaching to help our incoming ILI Fellows land the job through the New Sector matching process. I'm here with Brian, and he's going to introduce himself and take us through the next few slides.
Very good. Thank you, Marcia, and thank you to all of you. As always, we wouldn't be able to have the impact we have without all of you. Greatly appreciate you taking your time, not just for this presentation, but also for sitting down with our incoming fellows. So I'm Brian Garcelis. I'm New Sector's National Program and Talent Development Director. And let's go over what we're talking about today. So New Sector this year has been piloting 3 different programs. So the first piece is the Residency in Social Enterprise, the RISE program. New this year, we are not affiliated with AmeriCorps, so to keep it as similar as we could to the previous program, we have brought on our fellows as independent contractors. The rest has really remained the same. Those fellows are placed into full-time roles. We have training throughout the program. We also go through the mentorship program and learning teams as well. And the timeline is also the same, September through the end of July. Concurrent with the RISE program, we're also running the WISE program, or Workers in Social Enterprise Fellowship. These fellows are folks that are currently employed in the social sector. We have engaged them in our training, in our mentorship, in our learning teams. The difference being they weren't placed by us, they found their own employment. What we're talking about today is the Impact Leadership Incubator, or ILI. This program is going to start in February and end in June. Rather than being independent contractors, these folks will become employees at the organizations that they find. They're going to go through our process of being recruited and selected by us. They'll be matched at organizations for full-time employment. And for 5 months, we'll get access to our social impact leadership curriculum. So they'll go through our training, they'll get access to mentorship, they'll do our learning teams, and get access to staff coaching. So that's what we're going to be going over today, the Impact Leadership Incubator. And I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about the timeline and roles. The New Sector has already begun doing the outreach and recruiting. In fact, we've already started accepting applications and processing applications. We had a priority deadline that was in November. We expect about 1 to 2/3 of the cohort will be selected from that. Our second deadline is coming up in early December. What happens through this process is 2 interviews. The first interview is with the New Sector staff, the program associate. The second interview is also with New Sector staff, the program manager. Once we've done reference checks and actually offered the fellow to come on board, that's where you all come in. The next step in the process is our fellows are matched one-on-one with our alums to do a career coaching session. So today we're going to talk about what that session looks like and how to get folks prepared for the matching process.
Now, having situated your role as an alumni coach in the context of our new ILI program, you can see that you have a key function in supporting our incoming fellows in the matching process. As New Sector has focused in on our mission during our recent model transition, we've listened to the feedback from our alumni about how challenging the matching process can be. Committed to helping our fellows launch their career in the social sector, we aim to provide multiple layers of support, of which you are playing a part, to help our ILI fellows be successful in finding a long-term match in a local nonprofit or community organization. The goals of the Alumni Career Coaching session are threefold. They include to enhance and improve upon the incoming fellows' existing application materials, to help them land the type of role that they really want for the future. Remember, this is a long-term career. We want to help them and encourage them to gather and update all of the materials they need for the job hunt. And finally, we want to prepare fellows for success in New Sector's host site matching process. You probably won't be able to get a candidate from being a 5, let's say, out of 10, all the way up to that 10 mark in the course of 1 hour. But we can certainly help them to avoid some of the common pitfalls that land their application at the bottom of the pile. We can get them to do better research on the organizations. We can get them to have a stronger look to their application package, and we can get them to ask great questions at the end. We want to be able to tip the scales in their favor. We can do that by landing a pinky on there, not necessarily a cinder block. The aim for this mini session with them is really to help them have a strong application package and be able to get into that interview and impress. Not 100%, but just enough. Let's get into the logistics about how this will work. Before meeting with you, fellows will have completed a short online course covering 4 things: career action planning, resumes, cover letters, and interviews. Each of the sections of this online course that incoming fellows complete closely resemble those that you will have received during your fellowship. You can check out the links on our website for a copy of the presentation and handouts that they've received. Also in each of the sections, there is a pause for practice for the incoming fellows to do 3 things: gather existing relevant materials, be it their resumes that they sent into New Sector or resumes they've been using for other jobs. Maybe their cover letter that they have tried to tailor to a particular role in the past, or just a mind map on where they want to go with their career. They've been asked to apply the recommended best practices from the course, and they've been given 4 handouts to do so. They have then been asked to save all the materials, application materials, and their career action plan in a folder, ready for review with their alumni coach. At the end of their course, they're prompted to send you an email with all of that material. That way, they can meet with you to discuss. Once you get into the coaching session itself, we recommend the sample agenda listed here. For the first 15 minutes, you should spend some time getting to know the fellow and his or her goals. The next 15 minutes, you should revise and edit the cover letter and the resume that the fellow has sent you. Finally, in the last 15 to 30 minutes, you should take some time to do a mock interview, providing them with the feedback they need to have great answers when they go into the matching process. Before the alumni coaching session, you will receive an email introduction to your fellow. In that email, you are asked to set up a 45-minute to 1-hour coaching session. The email will include contact information for your assigned fellow, as well as recommended interview practice needs from the program manager that most recently completed an interview with that particular candidate. The fellow will then be instructed to email you the following materials prior to their coaching session: a completed career action plan, a revised resume or resumes for any of the role types they're likely to apply for, and revised cover letters, again, for any role type that they're likely to apply for. They're also asked to come prepared with the following items: a completed interview strategy guide, and the top 3 questions that make them nervous in interviews. These 2 items will not be turned into you in advance. They are meant to have them, though, in order to help them get through the mock interview portion of your one-on-one session with them. Together, these materials should provide you the basis for giving this incoming fellow quality feedback to help them land their job in the social sector. All right, let's jump into Career Coaching 101. Coaching skills are quite different from management skills, or even from being a good friend. I brought in our National Program Director, Brian, many years a coach and mentor to New Sector Fellows, to provide some examples of coaching throughout this course. Each time that we go through a different section of the agenda, he'll come in with some examples to put some context around what this might sound like in practice when you're doing your coaching session. Before we jump in, let's give you some inspiration. Here's a quote to get you thinking about what a coach is.
So Tom Landry says that a coach is someone who tells you what you don't want to hear, who has you see what you don't want to see, so you can be who you've always known you can be.
In the Fellows online course, they've been then asked to prepare and email you a copy of their career action plan prior to your session. To prepare on your end, we ask that you take 5 to 10 minutes before your coaching session to review that 2-page document. On your end, please identify some common interests. See if you have any common background or stories that you might want to share with them. I encourage you to write down 2 key questions you want to ask the fellow regarding his or her background and career goals. This will kick off the conversation right, and it will show them that you've taken the time to pay attention to what it is that's important to them in their career and help them build out all of their application materials to match those goals. Building rapport is a key to having a successful and productive coaching session. That initial trust is greatly needed so that the person on the other end of the conversation can listen to what you're saying, understand that the advice that you're giving is meant for their growth and development, and take whatever you're saying at face value. In order to achieve this goal, we ask that you be friendly and smile often, even on the phone, because they can hear you. The more open you are about your life, career, and experience with New Sector throughout the conversation, the more your incoming fellow will open up about his or her future goals. And remember, throughout the conversation, to practice active listening. That means pause for sharing, ask follow-up questions, and express interest wherever you can. All right, let's hear how this sounds in action. Brian, can you tell me a little bit about what you do when you first meet somebody coming to you for career advice? How do you break the ice?
Yeah, thank you, Marcia. So I think there's a couple of things that are really important, and for me, breaking the ice means being vulnerable and sharing that first. So I often start my career conversations by talking about where I might have failed or a lesson that I might have learned. An example I often use is when I first came to the nonprofit sector, I started at an early literacy organization. Did that because I was passionate about early literacy. Turns out it wasn't the right culture fit for me, turns out it wasn't the right role for me, and I really learned that on top of mission fit, it's also really important to think about what culture or environment you want to be in, as well as what does the role do. Starting with that allows the fellow to talk about the mistakes they've had, maybe where they're a little bit unclear, and allows you to create that connection. The second piece I would say is just asking genuine questions and showing interest is really important. So even really simple questions like, it's okay if you don't have any idea where you want to go. Let's start simple. What are the things on a to-do list that get you really excited, that you think about in the shower, that you think about on the weekend? What are those things on the to-do list you often find you wait until Friday at 4:30 and it's the last thing to check off and you dread doing it? Questions like that are open-ended and show some interest and allow the fellow to say, I don't really know, but I can answer some basic and simple questions, sets the tone for a positive conversation.
Thank you, Brian. In the resume portion of the Incoming Fellows course, they will have gotten a checklist asking them to go through and make sure that the visual appearance at a glance of their resume was attractive. Here is a list of things that you can also be looking for as you revise their resume. Be sure to use an inviting, readable format, ensure language consistency, order experiences using reverse chronology, and maintain 1 to 2 pages max for their resumes. You can also go through and
I think it's important to first acknowledge that for resumes and cover letters, in reality, we're really just glancing at them to decide very quickly whether or not we want to do an interview or not, which means about 10 to 15 seconds per document to make that decision. So what's important on the resume, and that we often see folks who apply to our program making mistakes on, is it shouldn't just be, here's a list of everything I've done. It really should be, here's a list of all those things that are relevant to the role I'm applying to and what skill sets I demonstrated through those experiences. That means if there are experiences that aren't relevant, they need to be taken off of the resume. So one of the major coaching tips we give is if it's not relevant, remove it. And I would say along those lines, you often see folks repeating or listing multiple experiences that show the same skill set. I think it's great that folks who come to us out of an undergraduate program were leaders of clubs, even multiple clubs. But demonstrating that you were a leader of 5 different clubs really just shows the same skill set that you could lead. I would rather see that section include bullet points to tell me what they did as a leader, whether that meant coaching other folks in the program, giving feedback to people, managing peers, all of those things that can be really relevant.
Thank you, Brian. In the cover letter portion of the Incoming Fellows online course, they get a big picture overview of what the cover letter is meant to do. And then we dig into a bit more of the detail with these do's and don'ts of cover letter writing. On the do side, we want them to open with strong statements, making it clear why they want the job and why they're right for it. Remember, as Brian mentioned before, hiring managers don't spend much time on these. That may be the only statement they ever read. We then ask them to be succinct and keep an easy read throughout the entire cover letter. It should be clear just at a glance what they're trying to achieve, what they're trying to say to the hiring manager about their fit with the particular role in question. They should also try to share accomplishments that show that they can address the challenges that the employer faces. If they're applying to be working in an education nonprofit, they should probably be talking about the time that they worked at a summer camp. They know what it's like to be on the front lines working with kids. They should try and personalize, to the best of their ability, their cover letter to the job and the organization for which they wish to work. Each time that they write a cover letter, it needs to be changed to be specific to the role that they are now looking to work in. In the new sector process, what this translates to is how they're going to be replying to their introduction email. Recall in the matching process, you and your future employer were sent an introductory email, and in that email asked to set up an interview. This is a great time for the fellow to write a mini cover letter. It's their first introduction to the individual on the other side of that email. This is their way to highlight the important things on their resume and to start to already steer the direction of the future interview. They shouldn't try to be funny unless it's clear that that's within the organizational culture of the particular job and role that they're looking to apply for. They shouldn't be sending generic cover letters. They should not be repeating their resume. And if they are really excited or thrilled about the particular organization they're working with, they don't need to go overboard with flattery. They can still be inspired, but not sound just silly. They should try and be professional and mature. So Brian, we're going to go into a mini session on cover letters. And I'm interested in knowing what it is that you look for in a cover letter as a hiring manager. What do you pick out?
Thank you, Marsha. I think I'll go back and repeat what I said around resumes, which is, again, you've only got about 10 or 15 seconds to look at this to make a determination whether or not this is a candidate you want to hire. I would say there are 2 examples that stick out for me of cover letters that were really great that accomplished that. So one of them was really simple. It had 3 bullet points that said, here are the 3 reasons why I would stand out as a fellow and what makes this fellowship the right opportunity for me. It was clear, it was concise. In 10 to 15 seconds, I could read it and understand exactly what that fellow was saying. The other one chose to tell a story, but the story was relevant. It was about starting as a little girl, even as a 5-year-old, having some clarity around making group decisions and making group decisions for impact with this particular person's sisters. I thought it was compelling and interesting, mostly because it then went on to say, here's how this is relevant to New Sector and the New Sector Fellowship. It doesn't have to go overboard, but it does have to be personalized, and it does need to say exactly why I'm listening to you or paying attention to you. The common couple of mistakes that folks make, if we get a cover letter that says Dear New Impact or something wrong, it often goes straight to the recycling bin, and definitely want to avoid that. Or even the wrong person. It can be addressed to New Sector and be addressed to someone who doesn't exist at our particular organization. And that sends a pretty clear signal in 10 to 15 seconds that the candidate wasn't taking the time to really say, this is a role I care about.
In the Incoming Fellows online course, they were given a list of common interview questions. Here is that list that they've been provided, and they should be prepared once they meet with you to go through and answer these questions. They've also been given a list of interview questions specific to nonprofits. In their interview strategy, they should be ready to tailor their message to the particular social sector area in which they wish to work. Putting this now in action, I'm going to bring in Brian for a mock interview. In particular, to answer 2 questions that our fellows often struggle with when going into interviews. The first challenging question in this mock interview is, what are your strengths and weaknesses?
Well, thank you, Marcia. I think that's a great question. And I'm going to start actually by answering the strengths piece first. So one of the things that attracted me to this role is I believe that my skill sets and my experiences are really aligned around what you're looking for on the position description. So this role, I know, requires a lot of capability of doing outreach, of doing relationship building, and that deep relationship building. We talked earlier in this conversation about my role at New Sector, and that how that role required me to build relationships quickly and deeply with fellows, with alumni, with mentors, with trainers, and with organizations. That really plays on my strengths. It's something I love doing and something I'm naturally good at. In terms of weaknesses, I think the good news is that while I certainly have weaknesses, and while they're aligned, everyone has weaknesses, those weaknesses really don't align with this position description. So I'll give you an example. I feel like my core weakness is that the things that are really nitty-gritty, detail-oriented around operations, I don't naturally thrive on. I was asked at one point to put together a technical guide for how New Sector processes applications. So that ended up being about a 10 to 12 page overview, step by step, of everything that it takes in the process. I wasn't particularly motivated to do that work, and when you're not particularly motivated to do it, it often doesn't line up with being, your strengths. And for me, I came out of that acknowledging that's not something I love to do. That's not something I'm particularly good at. The good news is, acknowledging that that was a weakness allowed me to say there are other folks on this team that know operations better than I do, and I can go to them when I have questions, and I can get a second set of eyes on the deliverables before they actually get turned in. And so I think sort of the core lessons here for me: number one, I feel really good that this position description aligns with my strengths and avoids a lot of my weaknesses. And number two, I really feel like from the weaknesses and knowing that, I've gained the tools to be able to seek out other folks to help me get over those rules.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. Another one of the challenging questions that we have our fellows coming to us with is this one. Tell me about a challenge you faced in the workplace and how you handled it with your team.
Absolutely. So I had a challenge earlier on in my career when I was working in the Senate office. There was a little bit of a disconnect between the state office where we were and our national team, and that really sort of came about and reared its head when we had some instances that we wanted to pay for in our state office that the DC office wasn't acknowledging as being important. I felt frustrated in that moment because it felt like it was really important, for us in the state office to have these events be paid for. What it took actually was for me to go one-on-one with the person I was disagreeing with to say, hey, can we back up for a second and just sort of share our core interests and share why this matters to us? And he shared with me the budgetary constraints. He shared with me how everything needs to be tied to a specific line item. And I shared with him the importance of these particular events for people in our state. And actually concluded that the office would pay for those. And he commented that in that moment it was important that he understood why we were asking for what we were asking for. Then went back to the team and had the issue resolved. I think what's important from that for me is learning to gather other people's perspectives. And what was really important, and I gained that skill set actually as an undergrad. As an undergrad, I was the leader of the political science club on campus, which took us bringing people at very different perspectives to the table, required a lot of active listening and understanding perspective before making decisions. So I actually got that skill set before I stepped into that office.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. So I want to take a moment and pick those answers apart a little bit and figure out why they are good answers to these two questions. So, to jog your memory, that first question was about strengths and weaknesses. What were you thinking about in the structure of your answer to make it a good one?
Absolutely. So, Marcia, for me, I think there are a couple of things. The first is I want the thesis to be really clear. So I started with my strengths and weaknesses aligned to the position description. And that's what I really wanted the interviewer to leave with, to say, whatever strengths and whatever weaknesses you're going to tell me are aligned with this position description and make you a fit. I've specifically pulled out strengths that I felt like aligned with the position description and weaknesses that I felt like weren't going to be required for the job. The second piece that I thought was really important in that answer was being honest. Oftentimes folks hear, what is your greatest weakness? And the inclination is to actually give a strength. I am overcommitted. I often take my work too seriously. I often work too many hours, right? That's not actually what they're looking for. Here's an opportunity to show vulnerability and be honest in a way that's not going to raise red flags.
Great, thank you. So the next question, to jog your memory, was tell me about a challenge you faced in the workplace and handling it with your team. What made the answer that you gave particularly well suited for this job and for this manager?
Absolutely. I think one of the core components to the answer I gave you and the reason I gave this answer is oftentimes our fellows come to us feeling like, but I don't have enough workplace experience to answer the question. And I think the reality is you probably do. So I went back to my undergraduate experience to demonstrate something that said I actually had this skill set before I got on the job, because I think all of our fellows will be able to do that. The other piece I think that was important is, again, showing honesty without raising red flags, being honest about the fact that we actually had a real challenge. It was difficult, it was a tough conversation, but then demonstrating that I can take a challenging conversation and tackle it head on in order to get it resolved.
Great, thank you. Awesome. That takes us right through to the end of your coaching session. After your alumni coaching session, we ask that you complete a short online survey to tell us how it went. A link will be provided in your introductory email. We're really asking for two things in this mini questionnaire. First, the date that you completed the coaching session. We'd like to make sure that everybody is receiving this coaching and that we know when it's been completed. Next, any recommended follow-up from the new sector program team. So if you noticed in your interview that the fellow was still struggling with particular questions, this could be something great to indicate to us, a way for us to follow up and make sure that they have the right answer sculpted for that particular question when they go into interviews in the matching process. If you happen to note that some of their goals seem potentially unrealistic for their time with New Sector, please let us know that too. We'd like to make sure that we're representing a consistent message when we're talking to our fellows, either as alumni or as program staff. Great! So now you understand what our aim is for these coaching sessions with our incoming fellows. In terms of next steps, if you haven't already done so, please complete the alumni coaching availability form. It's available on the alumni page of our website. Please become familiar with our website and our new program offerings. As we mentioned at the start of this course, The majority of our programs that we're rolling out this year are pretty new. And even if you were a fellow before in the summer or in our RISE program, there are certainly things that have changed since that time. Be sure that you know what our new programs are so that you can answer our incoming fellows' questions. Review the materials provided to the incoming fellows for the alumni coaching session. Make sure that you understand what they've been told to do and that your message and coaching critique is consistent with the way that we're attempting to present their materials to our host sites. Let us know if you need any additional resources or have other ideas on how to support our new fellows in the ILI model. And with that, we'd like to thank you very much for taking the time to be one of our alumni coaches. We really appreciate all of the hard work and effort that you are putting into making these new ILI Fellows successful in the social sector.
Thank you, Marcia, and thank you to all of you for stepping up and doing this. I just want to reiterate what Marcia said at the beginning, which is your job is not to transform these candidates. We believe in all of them. We think they're going to be great. This is just an opportunity to give them that little extra boost to make sure that they get their dream job. So thank you all for doing this. We really appreciate your support.